Good morning, everybody. Craig DeLeo again. And this is part of a series I'm going to do, and I'm not sure how far I'm going to get. I'm going to try to do the entire Constitution, and I'm going to talk about every single constitutional amendment and my interpretation and my feelings of exactly what each one of them means. And I'm going to try to keep these as short as possible without going too far. And I think some of the earlier amendments are going to be a little bit harder than some of the further ones because the early amendments or the earlier parts of the Constitution are a lot more. I hate to say the fact of they were written more plainly by our founding fathers, and they were meant to be very broad and very specific, and their intention of them was very. They thought being simple was going to make it easier for us, and was going to keep them broad and would be easier for us. And that was where I think some of the complexities of them come into play. And today's about the First Amendment. And unfortunately, I need to start getting in the habit of keeping my book in front of me when I read these. And that's something I'm going to do better about. But that way I'm reading the verbatim. And I apologize for not doing that today. But I'm going to recite them off the top of my head because the Constitution is always something I've believed in. It's something I've carried for, I've got no clue how many years. I've kept a copy of my Constitution in my bag, my briefcase, because it's something I've always believed in as an American. And the First Amendment of the Constitution says the government shall make no law regarding the adoption of religion, the free expression thereof, the freedom of press, the right to peaceably assemble, to, I'm going to get it wrong. And that's the problem, because when you play with the wording, and I think that's the point. When you play with the wording and try to modernize it too much, you have problems. Now, what's funny is the First Amendment is comes into three major things because the First Amendment has three major parts to it. And the first part is literally the freedom of religion and the fact that the US government is supposed to make no adoption of national religion, which that's easy. We haven't violated that. However, the second half of that first statement is about the interfering with our choices of religion, be it religion or not religion, and that's a complexity here these days. And at a federal level, I don't think we've necessarily failed that. But one of the things I always hear a lot of people say when it comes to religion in this country is separation of church and state. Now, I always have a bad habit of whenever somebody uses that phrase of separation of church and state, I have a bad habit of pulling out my pocket constitution and throwing them at them and saying, "Show me where in that document anywhere it says separation of church and state." And the answer is it's not. It's not in there at all. That actually comes from, if I remember correctly, from the Federalist Papers. That exact phrase. Um, and this is the thing: is you at no point in time did the founding fathers want to limit our expression thereof of freedom of religion. Now, do I think as federal employees, as government employees, be it state, teachers, etc., do they want to limit your influence when it comes to expression of religion? Absolutely. However, it didn't want you to influence others with your religion, but however, it didn't want to limit your ability to express it. But that's not where we're going to go down that issue. Now, the second part, freedom of speech. Now, this is one I think that we're having a lot of problems with these days is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is something that I've always had a bit of an irk with here in America, and I've always had an irk with just globally, is the fact of freedom of speech is a very difficult thing here in America because freedom of speech allows everybody to say what you can as you that you want. However, as soon as you interfere with someone's life and someone's expression of their freedom of speech, then you have violated the law. And that's something I think we need to take into consideration is as distasteful as your expression of freedom of speech may be, even if I hate your your belief and your freedom of speech. That's your right, especially when it's in public spaces. If you've gone through the process to properly execute that freedom of speech, to peaceably assemble, which is also in the Constitution, in that First Amendment, is the freedom of assembly. If you want to, protest the government's, which is also in there, protest the government's thing, whatever it is, and petition the government for protest, if you've gone through the proper process to do it, it's within my responsibility as also as a citizen to make sure that you gain your right to express yourself, as long as it's not interfering with somebody else's right to do the same. And that's one of the, I hate to say, the quirks with the First Amendment is, I as government, I as another free citizen, I have to allow you the right to do the same. As much as I may hate it, it's within your rights to do the same. And that is one of the quirks. And I to this day cannot remember who said it. I guarantee you it was another disgruntled veteran who said it. True freedom of speech is not me standing up and screaming at the top of my lungs what I believe in. True freedom of speech is me standing up for your right to say what you want when it's something I would truly lay my life down to prevent. That is true freedom of speech, and that is something that is truly difficult. I think we've truly lost our view on, is the fact of freedom of speech is that melting pot of ideas, and it's difficult. And as long as your freedom of speech is not interfering with the rights of somebody else, that's true freedom of speech. But freedom of speech also means letting everybody have their right to live their life as they see free, as long as it's not interfering with somebody else's. And also part of that First Amendment, I think we're losing right now, is the last part, is the ability to petition government with complaint. And I think that, again, I think we're in the wrong place. And this is one of those, the First Amendment, I think, is going to become critical in the next 4, 2, 4, 6, 10 years. I think this is one of those amendments that's really going to come back into play. And again, as you'll see in my next discussion, second protects the first. And again, this is one of those things that, again, the first 10, the Bill of Rights, is a difficult set of discussions because they're older and they're so complex. And again, I think I did the first a little bit of a disservice because I didn't have it here in front of me, but it is a complex discussion. And again, thank you all for your time, and have a super day, shipmates. Bye.